Let's take the blessing of Goddess of Knowledge, Knowing, and Intellect, Ma Saraswati.
मातृ प्रणाम 1, 2, 3। या कुन्देन्दु तुषारहार धवला या शुभ्रवस्त्रावृता या वीणावरदण्डमण्डितकरा या श्वेतपद्मासना या ब्रह्माच्युतशङ्कर प्रभृतिभिर्देवैः सदा वन्दिता सा मां पातु सरस्वती भगवती निशेषजाड्यापहा। मातृ प्रणाम 1, 2, 3। श्लोक अर्थ। जो विद्या की देवी भगवती सरस्वती कुंद के फूल, चंद्रमा, हिमराशि और मोती के हार की तरह धवल वर्ण की है और जो श्वेत वस्त्र धारण करती है, जिनके हाथ में वीणा दंड शोभायमान है, जिन्होंने श्वेत कमलों पर आसन ग्रहण किया है तथा ब्रह्मा, विष्णु एवं शंकर आदि देवताओं द्वारा जो पूजित है, वही संपूर्ण जड़ता और अज्ञान को दूर कर देने वाली माँ सरस्वती हमारी रक्षा करे।
Thank you, Mr. Vishesh. So now, this is the correct time to call our chief invitee of the day, Dr. Ajit Kumar, who is an assistant professor in Department of History, Kirodi Mill College, University of Delhi. He has almost 13 years of teaching experience. He has done MPhil and PhD from University of Delhi itself. He published more than 2 books, 8 research papers in international and national journals. He has presented more than 10 papers in seminars and conferences all over India. He has also undertaken one innovation project in 2015 and 16. He possesses a remarkable understanding on medieval Indian history, especially medieval Mithila. So please bless us and provide us the required blessing that our team, speaker, as well as listeners want. So please.
Well, thank you, Ajay. And good evening to everyone present here. First of all, I extend my heartfelt thanks to the organizers of this program, GSTS. I think it's a great endeavor to engage students as well as teachers in such a beautiful program, because the program is meant for an interactive session between the teachers and the students. And so therefore, I congratulate the organizers, especially Manish Ji, for organizing such a beautiful program, and also for inviting me to this. So thank you very much. I congratulate everyone on the occasion, and I just want you to proceed with the program. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir, for your encouraging words and inspiring us. Now, without wasting our more time, I would like to hand over the stage to Miss Shivani Sharma of Gargi College, University of Delhi, to speak on the topic medieval alchemy. Miss Shivani Sharma, please.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. Myself, Shivani Sharma. I'm from Gargi College, and I'm an undergraduate student with BSc Physical Science there. Today, I'm here in front of you to talk about medieval alchemy. So, I'm presenting my screen. I hope you all, my screen is visible to all of you.
Yes.
Okay. So, before learning any subject, any new concept, we have a lot of questions in our minds. Similar psychological curiosity occurs here too. But this time we have similar questions like what was alchemy, when was it used, where was it used, how people used it, and why people used it. On my topic on medieval alchemy, I will be briefing on some subject. I will try my best efforts to clear some particular statements and the concept of alchemy, in particular medieval alchemy. And I wish at the end of this talk, many of you will be able to understand the concept of alchemy. Proceeding. So first question, while learning any concept, we have a most common question that what this time we have what is alchemy. So basically alchemy can be defined as the process of taking something ordinary and turning into some extraordinary object. Alchemy was a form of early chemistry that aimed to transmute base metals into gold and to create an elixir of longevity or eternal life. It is an ancient branch of natural philosophy, a philosophical and proto-scientific tradition that was historically practiced in China, India, the Islamic world, and the modern Europe. In its Western form, alchemy is first attested in a number of pseudepigraphical texts in Greco-Roman Egypt during the first few centuries CE. As you all can see in the slide, I have mentioned what is the meaning of pseudepigraphical text. In the medieval times, what happened that a lot of paperwork was mixed up with the a lot of people in today's time are not able to find the real author or real writer of the work. So we use some wrong names and give the credit to some other person. That means pseudepigraphical text, and that a lot happened in the Western culture and European world. In the Middle Ages, alchemy was a mixture of science, philosophy, and mysticism. Far from operating within the modern definition of scientific discipline, medieval alchemists approved their craft with a holistic attitude. That is, they believed the purity of mind, body, and spirit. That was necessary to pursue the alchemical quest successfully. At the heart of medieval alchemy was the idea that all matter were composed of four elements: earth, air, fire, and water. With the right combination of these elements, it was theorized that any subject on earth might be formed. This included precious metals as well as elixirs to cure disease and prolong life. Alchemists believed that the transmutation of one substance into another was possible. Thus, we have of medieval alchemy seeking to turn lead into gold. Medieval alchemy was just as much a science, and practitioners preserved their secrets with an obfuscating system of symbols and mysterious names for the material they studied. But the question arises, why did they keep doing that? Did they really think it would work? Was it some science experiment or was a religious ritual? Answer to all such curious questions is just one word, that yes, it was all of those things. In a kind of conclusion, let's say alchemy as a way of thinking philosophically about stuff by changing it. Alchemy, like any other knowledge making system, was torn between text and experiment, that is between loyalty to tradition and iconoclasm, and then return to basic observation. In the spiritual field of alchemy, it was believed that alchemists must transform their souls in order to transform metals. In other words, they must purify their souls through fasting and prayer, which in today's world can be succincted as concentration. Moving on, the medieval alchemists believed that the alchemy can be threefolded. That means the idea that the goals of the alchemy was threefolded. First, to discover the relationship of man to the cosmos and then take advantage of that relationship to the betterment of mankind. Second, to find the philosopher's stone, which was an elusive substance that believed to make possible the creation of an elixir of immortality and the transmutation of common substances into gold. Third, it was believed that alchemists can use the alchemy as a tool of medicine in the later Middle Ages, as the renowned Paracelsus did. Paracelsus was a very renowned alchemist of his times. With this, alchemy made important contribution to networking, metalworking, refining, production of gunpowder, ceramic glasses, dyes, inks, paints, cosmetics, extracts, liqueurs, and a lot of other things. Alchemists conceptual used chemical elements in the first rudimentary periodic table and introduction of the process of distillation to the Western Europe. With this now, I want to explain some terms which are often used while we discuss the concept of alchemy, or in particular medieval alchemy. Basically, there were three major terms used in the whole course, in which the word chrysoporia is the term used for the transmutation of base metal into noble metals, particularly gold. We can say the quest for the universal transmutation agent was chrysoporia, which literally means make into gold. To get started, a chrysopoion would combine the right ingredients in an egg-shaped vessel called an alembic and then heat the mixture up for a long time. Chrysopoeia required fine-tuning the practice of metallurgy. That is, alchemists had to heat ingredients on days on end, controlling the temperature precisely without the aid of modern lab equipment and or even a thermometer. Indeed, it was a hard work and it was an exhausting work. But eventually, the mixture of ingredients would turn black, then white, then yellow, and finally red. And if this process goes well, the experiment might be successful, but it never did so. Because to reach such a high temperature without destruction of whole setup was quite not possible at that time. But this approach was continued to be practiced as alchemy persisted. Because transmutation clearly produced something, including new compounds. Those compounds
Shivani, 1 minute. Can you switch off your camera so we can listen you more clear? Because I think your voice is somehow not clear. So can you switch off your
True.
camera?
Sure, sure. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. There is one example of the same, that is Luna fixa, which was a dense white metal that was corrosive resistant, has a high melting point and was pretty soft, which for today's world can be platinum, white gold, or maybe something else. But alchemy was never all about metals. The human body, for example, was understood as an alchemical workshop. Chemical reactions happen in the organs, transmitting one kind of stuff into another. In an alchemical framework, illness were reactions gone wrong. So while the alchemists included metallurgists, mine directors, goldsmiths, and natural philosophers, they were often physicians interested into making efficacious compounds for pharmaceuticals or chemetria. Chemetria, which is the second term often used while learning alchemy. One of the vecchier life scientific practices that come out of the ancient and medieval search to understand therapeutic compounds was palingenesis, which means life again. The idea that things could be bring back to life by burning them and then freezing their ashes. For this, alchemists spent a lot of time burning and freezing leaves. About these three terms, chrysopoeia, chemetria, palingenesis, a lot of assumptions are made. There are a lot of books which often deliver mixed information about them. But still today, modern chemistry is trying to find the answer behind the secrets of those terms created by medieval alchemists. So in this slide, I have added an image of collection of alchemical symbols that were used by medieval alchemists because they believed that they should hide their work by using some historical symbols or by recording their work in secret languages so that their work could not be used by some other person. But at least these make us pay more about these. At least these make us pay careful attention to living things and what stuff these seems to be made of. Just as there are multiple sciences today, there were multiple alchemies in medieval times. Alchemy was born in ancient Egypt, where the word chem was used in the reference to the fertility of flames. Around the Nile, Egyptian beliefs in life after death and the mummification procedures they developed probably give rise to rudimentary chemical knowledge and the goal of immortality. By 332 BC, Alexander the Great had conquered Egypt, and Greek philosophers became interested in the Egyptian way. Greek views of how matter is made up of 4 elements of nature were now merged with the Egyptian sacred science. The result was chemia, the Greek word for Egypt. When Egypt was occupied by the Arabs in the 7th century, they added al to the word chemia, and alchemia, meaning the black land, is now seen as a possible origin for the word alchemy. In 391, invading Christians burned the great library in Alexandria, destroying many relevant works. Alchemy was also independently developed in China by Taoist monks. Chinese alchemy was tied into ideas about earth itself. The monks pursue both the outer elixirs and the inner elixirs, the former being minerals, plants, etc., which could prolong life, and the later being the use of exercise techniques such as Qigong to manipulate the Qi or life force of the body. Chinese alchemists detected its vital channel of energy transmission using magnets, formalizing that system of earth magic called feng shui. This work eventually led to the invention of gunpowder. Chinese alchemy also included a search for immortality called Vaidan. Mostly Vaidan was also all about self-experimentation and diet. Similarly, India also developed its alchemy independently. Chinese beliefs are a lot more similar to the Indian one. Indian alchemy also used external and internal methods to purify the body and prolong life. Indian alchemy focused on medicine on form of mercury and how to preserve health and hopefully create an undecayable body. Indians have Ayurvedic textbook and Samhitas which had a load whole chapters on aphrodisiacs and another on toxicology. Alchemy supplied a way of developing these love potions and poisons. In the work, the Indians invented steel and long before Bunsen and Kirchhoff work, which eventually help us to identification of different metals. On the screen, you all can see that I have added a picture of a yantra. This is a yantra made by the ancient Indian alchemist. Most of the alchemy work made by the medieval period was now pseudographically copied by the Western invaders. So this is a work by ancient Indian chemists who believe that there should be 32 types of apparatus which can help in pharmaceutical and chemical investigation. There were mainly 3 types of furnaces: the Koshti yantra, the Dekhi yantra, and the Tiryak Patana yantra. This is the translation of the picture, that how this picture is made, and it is a translated book from the Rasayatna Sumakaya, which is a book of Indian ancient alchemist. Okay, now moving on. The introduction, the Indian alchemy mainly focus on medicine and form of mercury that I have already told. In the introduction of the alchemy to the West, which came in 8th century when the Arabs brought it to Spain. From there, it quickly spread to the whole Europe, or say the rest of Europe. In Europe, alchemy led to the discovery of manufacture of amalgams and the apparatus required for them. Eventually, by the 16th century, the alchemists in Europe had separated into 2 groups. The first group focused on the discovery of new compounds and their reactions, leading to what is now known as chemistry. The second continued to look at the more spiritual, metaphysical side of alchemy, continuing the search for immortality and the transmutation of metals into gold. This led to the modern day idea of alchemy. Modern discussions of alchemy are generally split into the examinations of its esoteric practical application and its esoteric spiritual aspects, despite criticism by several scholars that they should be understood as complementary. Eric John Homyard and Mary Louise von Franz are 2 of the scholars. According to Eric John Homyard, who is an historian of the physical sciences, examine the subject in terms of early chemistry, medicine, and the philosophical and religious context in which these events occur. Mary Louise von Franz, who interested historians of astorism, which means movement of that development within the Western society, psychologists, and some philosophers and spiritualists. Hence, now the subject has also made an ongoing impact on literature and art by attracting the attention of those scholars who like to view and examine the subject in every possible aspect, but not only as science. In this slide, I have mentioned that how alchemy plays a great role in today's modern world fiction and games. A lot of writers and filmmakers use alchemy as a medium to show their work in a very interesting way. They use alchemy in fantasy movies and science fiction movies also. A lot of video games, even I have played some games in which a lot of potions were used for reviving the avatar or the character of the game. So with this, alchemy plays a very important role in today's world in every aspect, not only as science, but in literature and arts also. Alchemy is full of secrets. Nevertheless, over the past generations, scholars have been revealing more and more of its surprising content and importance. Alchemy is now increasingly recognized as a fundamental part of heritage of chemistry, of continuing human attempts to explore, control, and make use of the natural world. alchemists developed practical knowledge about matter as well as sophisticated theories about its hidden nature and transformations. Many alchemists are known from the thousands of surviving alchemical manuscripts and books. Agathocdaemon, Cleopatra, Moses of Alexandria, Olympiodorus of Thebes, Pseudo-Aristotle, Stephen of Alexandria are well-known Greco-Roman Egypt alchemists. Siddhartha Mill, Nagarjuna, Agastya, Valar, Arunagiri Mathur, Kannada, Patanjali, who was also an ancient alchemist, are now mentioned as Indian medieval alchemists. Among Chinese alchemists, Wei Buo and Zhang Zhou the Elder, while among Islamic alchemists, Khalid ibn Yazid, Archippus, Al-Khindi, Al-Farabi, Muhammad ibn Zakaria, Razi, etc. are well known. Among the European alchemists, a large number of names are mentioned, including John Dastin, Dondi, Paracelsus, Boyle, Isaac Newton, Samuel Norton, Ali Puli, and Francis Hotman. Among all the alchemists of all the time, the person most famous today for his work in alchemy is the Swiss physician and iconoclast, Paracelsus, who was born in 1493. In addition to his work, he was also famous for the phrase, "the dose make the poison." He believed that the philosopher's stone was a universal solvent called alkys, which was derived from lime, alcohol, and carbonate of potash, and could theoretically dissolve anything, even gold. Most radically, Paracelsus introduced salt as a third element that made up of all metals. He identified three primes, that is the tria primia of alchemy. The primes are related to the law of triangle, in which two components come together to produce the third. The three alchemy primes were sulfur, mercury, and salt, that represent the expansive force, the omnispirit spirit of life, and the base matter respectively. In modern chemistry, we can't combine the elements sulfur and mercury to produce common salt, but yet alchemy recognized substances reacted to yield new products. He was a critic of university, natural philosopher, and physician. He saw these scholastics as like to mistake textual generalization for truth. Now, this is a very common question which arises in the mind of a lot of people nowadays, that whether alchemy was real or not, or is the alchemy a real thing nowadays too? So, a lot of people from the time believe that alchemy might be real and it is a illegal thing because it was against the spiritual thoughts of the spiritual beliefs of the people of the era. So, a lot of people in a lot of countries believe that alchemy was illegal and it should not be practiced. Nowadays also, there is an ongoing debate on the topic of alchemy, whether it was real thing or not. I have used two case studies in which there was a medieval alchemist named John of Lupercisca, who was born in 1310 in central France. He believes in chrysopoeia, ways of turning base metals into some important matters, mainly in gold. But he was considered by the people as antichrist because his beliefs were against the Christ and against the church. While he was working on his concept on chrysopoeia, he wrote his book, and he mentioned in his book and quoted the line that it might seem incongruous that a man so fervently committed to the ideal of poverty would also devote himself to finding the secret of making gold. In his book, he also tried to make people understand that the work he is doing is the work that might help people of the future or the people of the current era in a lot of many ways. In his book, he also mentioned about the consideration of the fifth essence of all things. According to the Greeks, there were four things. There were four things which should be considered: earth, soil, air, and water. But according to him, there should be a fifth essence of all things, which he named burning water, which is also today's world alcohol. According to him, alcohol was a very pure and finest object that he discovered, and he was also trying to make the use of alcohol in the medicines. Another case, which is of a 19th century practitioner, there was a name mentioned, Theodore Treferin. He mentioned in his book that example of transmutational alchemy, continuation after its 18th century demise, probably form only the visible tip of the iceberg. According to him, today's world chemistry is a result of the alchemy of the medieval or ancient times. And he believed that people are criticizing it today, but they are not ready to accept that today chemistry is the result of medieval alchemy only. With this, even if alchemical books were often secret concealing gibberish, they were important in supporting a long-term rational debate about the true nature of stuff. Alchemists contributed to mining and metallurgy and pharmacy and medicine, and their achievements and aspirations, as well as failures, inspired artists, playwrights, and poets. Their searches and goals had both commercial and scientific aspects, as well as philosophical and theological ones. Many alchemists express a strong confidence in the power of human beings to imitate and improve on nature. The work of historians of science continues to reveal the enormous complexity and diversity of alchemy, its important position in human history and culture, and its continuation with what we call today chemistry. According to the alchemist, alchemy was a way which can be used in the future time to turn it in a beautiful manner. Because at that time people were trying to make the use of the best use of the things they have. So I have mentioned some list of the books. These are not actually the books written by the alchemist, because the work is now almost destroyed by all the people. But these are the books which have some similar psychological mindset, same as alchemists, because they are also dreaming, and they are also using some ideas of thinking about the future. There is also a book that I forgot to mention in the slide. Its name is The Alchemist. In the book, the writer tries to send the message that a person should do the work which is his dream, and he should try to make the implementation of his work by actions, not by only writing text or by giving speeches to some other person. So I have mentioned all the references that I use in my talk, in my slide, so you all can use. And with this, I will now put and dot to my talk. And thank you the whole team of GSTS and all the teachers for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shivani, for this wonderful talk. You very beautifully discussed nearly whole of the medieval alchemy, with also a glimpse on the ancient Indian alchemy as well in these 20 minutes. And I'm sure that our listeners might have enjoyed this talk to the fullest. Now, let us move to some of the questions that were put up by our listeners. So the first one is from Shubham Tiwari. He's asking that, don't you think that alchemy was more of a failed philosophy rather than applied chemistry?
In my opinion, if we look at alchemy was a philosophy. It was a way, I have mentioned in my talk also that many people were confused that whether it is a scientific experiment or some philosophy or a religious ritual. Because at that time, alchemists believed have spirituality as well as a wish to learn something new also. So in my opinion, alchemy was both of the things. They were trying to make something which was not possible at that time. So it can be put in the part of philosophy, but they were working on it and they were trying to make the best of the thing. So I think it was the chemistry. So it can be put in both ways, and it depends on the people how they want to understand the concept.
Okay, Ms. Shivani. Another question is from Aradhya Tyagi. He's asking that many arguments have come forward saying that alchemy was witchcraft. How do you see them?
Many people say it is a witchcraft, and I think it was in the medieval time and an ancient time. That time was the prime time. People were not having anything; they were only having some ideas, and they were so confused that how to put all those things, how to practice all the things. Even today, if we learn, we know who the father of surgery, who was an Indian. He used to use some instruments which were not sterilized, and there were a lot of reactions. So it can be seen as witchcraft. But what is more important is to look at the positive thing of the time. I believe I believe and I know that a lot of uncivilized ways were used during that time, because when we mix spirituality and some experiment together, it's become a mess. We have to separate them. And nowadays, when alchemy take the shape of chemistry, it is now more civilized, and now we are understanding that how to do all the experiments. So I think it wasn't witchcraft, but it was seen as a witchcraft by the people who were in pain because of the whole process.
Okay, Shivani, that was really nicely answered. Another question is from Mr. Ajay Gupta. He's saying that we see the examples such as that of Sir Isaac Newton, Robert Boyle, who not only considered alchemy but also worked upon it. What, according to you, would be the future of alchemy if deciphered completely? Do you think it has potential to replace the modern machines, such as the nuclear transmuters, with the old techniques, which could be less cost effective?
I think what was alchemy is now called as chemistry. The alchemy was in a primary ways, uncivilized ways were used, but now when it takes the name of chemistry, it becomes civilized in a method. Now we are using a different methods to perform some experiment, all of the things. So I think chemistry is not taking the alchemy will not overcome the chemistry, or chemistry will overcome the alchemy. I think we are in an alchemical revolution. We are using the ways of alchemy by improving the ways of alchemy into chemistry. I think it's just two different names, but the same concept in a proper mathematical way and in a proper, civilized way. I think both the things are same, but only difference is that era. It was in the medieval time and it's the modern time. We are learning from our mistake that we have made in our past.
Okay, Shivani. So the last question is from Ms. Siddhi Tiwari. She's asking that how can you trust alchemy as a science when things like turning lead into gold and discovery of philosopher's stone was the main objective, which seems nearly impossible?
I think that was nearly impossible at that time, but today we are making all the things. We are turning lead into gold by some nuclear transmutation. If you want to learn with the nuclear transmutation, we can turn lead into gold or any other substance into gold, or we can turn from one form to another form. So it is possible. About medicine, because there were three goals: to use alchemy as in medicines, to use alchemy to change one metal to another metal, and to make elixir of life, to save the life. I think we have in a precise way we have reached the sport what alchemists were trying to do. So I think they were only dreaming, and now we have made the dream possible in very precise way, not accurate, but in a precise way. And I think in the coming times, when alchemy done to chemistry, and when chemistry take a turn, when all the answers we will be having. Because now today, when we learn chemistry, there are concepts that someone discovered this, then other person came and he failed his theory. The other person came, he failed his theory. So I think it is an alchemical revolution. We are changing with time, and we are improving on our mistakes. So I think it was idea given by alchemists, and now as a scientist, we are making the best of the things that we have.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Shivani. I think it was very finely answered. Now back over to you, Mr. Shubham.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Saurabh. It was really very informative topic, I believe, and I mean it. So have this kind of another topic in the following Sundays. I would like to welcome Mr. Mudit Bharadwaj, who is the speaker for the next Sunday, to give a brief about his topic. Mr. Mudit Bharadwaj.
Good evening, everyone. Mudit Bharadwaj, third-year student, BA on Science, All evening. I'm content that I have good opportunity.
Mudit, your voice
expound
is
my
not
words
clear.
on the
Mudit, your voice is not clear.
Am I audible?
Go ahead.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. I'm Mudit Bharadwaj, third-year student of BA Honors Political Science, Shyamlal College Evening. I'm contented that I have been bestowed with this opportunity to expound my words on the propitious movement of 25th session of Graduate Scholars Talk Series on next Sunday, that is 1st of August. My subject matter will be sedition, a sardonical saga, a topic that you all are well acquainted with. As you can see, it is very in debate each day. Talking about the topic, I shall be touching upon the history of the law in the colonial era, that how and why it was inducted into the Indian legal system, few important judgments and amendments afterwards, then the issue of the law at the time of framing of the constitution, how it was left out, its interrelation with Article 19(1)(a) and 19(2). Then I shall be focusing upon significant developments in the law in its interpretation post-independence, how it had actually shaped over last 7 decades, where actually the problem lies in its application. On top of that, we will also look upon its position globally, the debates going around this law, and by the end of my talk, I'm sure that it will impel you to yourself analyze the position of sedition law in India and whether to sustain or scrap this law, or I should say to come to the best possible way forward, and not to mention it's must listen for civil services aspirants. So don't forget to join next Sunday at 5 p.m. Thank you. Until then, stay well, stay spirited. See you there.
Thank you, Mudit Bharadwaj. Thank you, Mudit Bharadwaj. And we are eagerly waiting for your talk, especially in the month of August when we got independence, 1947. So now I would like to invite our dignified chief invitee, Dr. Ajit Kumar sir, again to share his experience and views regarding this talk. Sir.
Thank you, Subham. It was really a wonderful talk. It was enlightening. Thank you, Sivani. You took pain in letting us know about alchemy first. You defined it properly, and then you started with the three-folded alchemy that talked about relationship of between man and cosmos for the betterment of mankind. You talked about. You also named, though in a nutshell, the philosophy of stone, and then you also let us know about how the medievalist, the alchemist during medieval period used alchemy as a tool of medicine, and you tried to show it through graphic representations and tables. Also, you remain successful in highlighting some of the terms used, like chrysophobia. That is basically the crux of the whole science of alchemy, make into gold, as you successfully used the term. It was a transition from ordinary substance to extraordinary substance. And then you talked about different symbols, how fire was represented through a particular pictographic angle that was a triangle, and the water and so on. And then you briefly talked about its history. You started with its origin in Greco-Roman things, and then you talked that how Arabs started using it, and the name alchemy comes from alchemia, and that is an Arabic word. So then also I would like to congratulate you for bringing Indian alchemy into picture, although some of the medieval alchemy was missing. I'll come to that. But then you successfully talked about yantras, various three kinds of yantras which were used: the Kositi yantra, Dekhi yantra, and Tiryak Patana yantra. And yes, these were used by the tantrics of ancient Indian periods. And then you talked in a little detail about European alchemy, their contributions not only to in the field of science, but also in the field of literature, art, fictions, and games. And then you came to a pertinent question whether alchemy as a real thing or not. And by citing 2 case studies, you tried to say that it was not. It was a real thing during those days. You also tried to successfully, answer the questions posed to you about alchemy. So hats off to you, because remaining at the undergraduate level, you prepared so well, and you came to such a beautiful representations. But Despite these things, there are certain suggestions that I would like to make before everyone, and particularly to you, as the topic was it has been medieval alchemy, where medieval alchemy is understood as a phenomena, right? This phenomena with independent cultural values, at the same time acting as a step of history of science that led to the emergence of new scientific thinking, right? This is what was your approach during the entire talk. So therefore, when we say medieval alchemy, then there is a need to, although you tried, but then there is a need to situate everything in medieval circumstances. For example, what is medieval in Western context is basically all about theology that reigned supreme during medieval period. It was the theocentric society, it was theocentric polity particularly history students, read them in their talk. Although, the listeners, the audience, belong to, the department called history, and you are from science background. So therefore, such anomaly may be because of the fact that you come from a different discipline, but no problem. If you try to situate, medievalism in your talk, then you'll have to talk about. I mean, there is a need to talk about theology, and then also, we have a medievalism basically denoted theology, feudalization of polity, economy, sectarian conflicts, and so on and so forth. And that is the reason why several questions occurred. Some of us asked you certain questions about witchcraft, the magic, because one of the crux of ancient and medieval alchemy happened to be the magical power that the alchemists were supposed to possess. They claimed that they possessed, magical power with themselves. And that is the reason why in the history of science, particularly, alchemy has been presented problems for historians of science. And according to pioneering historians of scientific revolution, scientific revolution took place, during 14th, 15th, 16th century in Europe. So these pioneering historians said that alchemy was a mystic science, a pathology of thought, and even the greatest obstacle to the development of rational chemistry. And they said that it is not chemistry. They used the term chemistry, CHEMYSTRY. So it is more of a mystery. It is not science, and so on and so forth. It looked accusations, ranged from being alchemy as thoroughly the unscientific or pseudoscientific, and it dealt with frauds and so on and so forth. But as you rightly suggested, the recent scholars and the recent historiography on this particular topic has unraveled this particular myth, and they are of the opinion that it is not about mystery alone. It is not about it is not unscientific. Rather, many scientific tools were used in making the alchemy the possible thing. It is not chemistry which came first. It is alchemy which came first. So we must think about it. We must think that there is a famous debate that is going on between science and philosophy, and it is said that science is born in the lap of philosophy, and science ends where philosophy begins. So it is actually, it should not be seen as a conflict between science and philosophy. It should be seen as a historical process of the evolution of chemistry as a science, and of course chemistry has many things to do with it. And you rightly mentioned in your talk that many scholars nowadays are exploring topics of long-standing importance, such as the relationship between alchemy and matter theory, medicine and mechanical philosophy. Many other scholars have drawn on the tools of art history, religious history, and even archaeology. I would like to thank Preeti ma'am, who has, she was writing in the chat box about, Christopher Marlowe, Ben Jonson. Christopher Marlowe was a Renaissance playwright, and he did mention alchemy. And not only, there are many scholars. Even Jean Austen talked about, alchemy, and it developed somewhere or other from Aristotelian theory of, Aristotelian theory that negated experimentation. So it is. If alchemy has to be studied, it has to be studied not. It should not be used. One should not draw a boundary line of alchemy by restricting it to science alone, because what is unfortunately in our time, the belief in the limitless possibilities of science has historically compromised itself. Science cannot be the only form of cognition of world which gives a person the necessary knowledge. One has to go beyond science, and one has, if you look at the feelings, the soul, the body, then you will find the perfect linkages. Why people call it philosophy of stone. Then you will find the linkages between the outer and the inner world. You will find the linkages between the body and soul and the scientific aspect. So well done, Shivani, and there are scope for betterment. Finally, I'll give you A+ in the kind of presentations that you have. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir.
Sir, more about my students, something about my students.
Right.
Shyamlal Evening College.
It goes without saying, Manishji, because I see the participation level at 5 o'clock, or that too on Sunday. It's a leisure day, everyone wants to enjoy, but then people are here listening to these topics. So hats off to the history students who all are there, and hats off to the organizers, because this is really a great move. And the moment you talked about it, I was not at all free on Sunday, because I was about to go to Faridabad today, but I changed the program because of such an interesting event that you held. It's not that I suffered. I gained so many things from Shivani, and of course I learned so many things from the history students of Shyamlal College. Hats off to you.
Sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your precious time to us. And you very well describe about what is science and how to see science. So thank you so much, sir, again. Now I would like to invite Miss Preeti for the vote of thanks.
DN sir wants to say something.
चलिए, बहुत अच्छा लगा, और मैं बस एक सेकंड में ही कहूँगा, आपका ये बहुत अच्छा लगा, बहुत दिनों के बाद देखा हूँ, फिर और बात कर लेंगे अजीत जी।
तो बिल्कुल, अरे मैं तो अपना कैमरा ऑन करना ही भूल गया था, मैं कर रहा हूँ।
अच्छा, और बातें करेंगे हम आपसे, मैं मनीष जी से वो कर लूंगा, फिर आपसे मिलते हैं बहुत जल्दी, और बहुत अच्छा लगा आपने तो पूरा। ओके, थैंक यू सर, थैंक यू।
यस प्रीति।
अब किसके आवाज रह रही है?
Preeti is trying to join because she is going to give a vote of thanks. So I think today little bit glitches about the internet connectivity of some of my students. So don't worry, she will join and give vote of thanks. Otherwise, we are having some backup plan also.
बीच में मैं एक बार और बोलना चाहता हूँ कि ये पॉसिबल मतलब बाकी सबके साथ तो है ही, बट मनीष जी के साथ ये पॉसिबिलिटी है कि वो कुछ भी जो इम्पॉसिबल सा चीज़ है वो पॉसिबल बनाते हैं। तो इस तरह का टॉक को के बारे में इनिशिएटिव लेना इज सच अ ग्रेट एंडेवर मनीष जी।
सर मनीष जी
अजीत जी मनीष कुमार जी जो करते हैं वो अजूबा काम करता है, अजूबा करते।
अरे
अब बहुत अच्छा किया, हमें तो
बिल्कुल यूनिक है, बिल्कुल सही कहा आपने।
कहाँ से बुलाए, और आज का जो सब्जेक्ट है, आज के सब्जेक्ट के बारे में मुझे ही ज्यादा कुछ पता नहीं है, और बहुत अच्छा लगा। आपने भी आज कमाल कर दिया कि सब्जेक्ट
रियली दिस इज अ प्लेटफॉर्म स्टूडेंट फ्रॉम गार्गी कॉलेज, teacher speaker from KMC college, and platform provided by Shyamlal Evening College. So just like
inter college कर दिया।
Thank you, sir. Yes, Preeti, I think you are here.
बहुत अच्छा।
So should I start?
Yes, Preeti, go ahead.
Yes, we are waiting for
Okay,
you.
okay. Sorry, sir. Good evening, everybody. I am Preeti, a Joint Secretary of Saksha, the History Society of Shamlal College Evening. It's my privilege to have been asked to propose a vote of thanks today in the 24th session of GSTS. I, on behalf of Saksha and whole GSTS team, extend a hearty vote of thanks to the honorable delegates who blessed us with their presence and took out valuable time of your busy schedule. As you all know, the Department of History is under the convenership of Dr. D.N. Singh sir and under the guidance of Dr. Manish Karmar sir, Dr. Seema Meena ma'am and Mr. Ajay Kumar sir achieved new heights. In 2016-17, this was the first time when department formed its society Saksha. The current office bearers of 2021 are Mr. Ankit as a president, Ms. Mandira Paul as a vice president, Mr. Shubham Tiwari as a secretary, Ms. Preeti, me as a joint secretary, Ms. Chani Sikarwar as a treasurer. Saksha has organized quizzes, debates, lecture series, seminars, career counseling and educational trips. Saksha also organized the OBE seminar and 23 graduate scholars talk series. This is a weekly talk series started to present the scholars' view on various topics to enhance their ideas and speaking skills. Now I wish to express my gratitude to our guest Dr. Ajit Kumar sir for his kind, encouraging and informative word, for giving us his precious time. Thank you so much, sir. I would like to express my thanks to Dr. D.N. Singh sir, convener of the society, for his presence in this program. My sincere thanks to all the faculty members who become a part of this event. Special thanks to Dr. Preeti Shukla ma'am, Dr. Pankjendra Kishore sir for joining us today. Also, I would like to extend a special thanks to Ms. Sakshi, former president of Sakshi, who joined us today in her busy schedule. I must mention our deep sense of appreciation for Ms. Shivani Sharma. I especially like your talk where you mentioned something important for us. The way you explained your topic is exemplary. A big thanks you to Ms. Shivani Sharma for your efforts toward your lecture, and it was absolutely amazing how you tackled all the questions. Now I would like to take this opportunity to place our hearty thanks to the GSTS team for their enormous cooperation in the organization of this event. Finally, I wish to thank all the students from various departments who joined and become a part of today's event. Thank you all so much for your time and patience. Once again, thank you all very much. Stay inside, stay safe and take care of each other. We will see you next Sunday on 1st August 2021 with topic Sedition, a Sardonical Saga by Mr. Mudit Bharadwaj. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
थैंक यू अजीत जी, अब विदा ले रहे हैं, फिर बात करेंगे.
बिल्कुल
yes.
बिल्कुल.
अजीत जी, ओके.
Thank you, sir.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Thank you, sir. Yes, thank you everyone. Pankaj sir, Sumul, Shivani, again, thank you very much. Sakshi, Preeti, everyone, it's a great evening. Good. I'm the last person who will leave, so thank you very much. Sakshi, be on time. Yes. Thank you. Sumul, you too. Yeah.
सर रिकॉर्डिंग स्टॉप कर दीजिए.
Oh, yes. ये आपने सही बोला.